recorded. We talked about her background and a lot of information like that. The second day, where I met with her myself and did not video that because some of these psychological tests are private and they should not be videoed. So we did some psychological testing during that second day, and then on the third day, back with the video, back with Dr. Mack, we talked with Ms. Clancy about the things that she was thinking and feeling and doing around the time of the alleged offense. And so I mentioned that I reviewed records. I've got a report sitting in front of me, and those records are spelled out over 4 pages, so I'm not going to run through the whole list with you. But those records did include things like cell phone records, the defense expert forensic psychiatric evaluation reports by Dr. Resnick and Dr. Spinelli, some Department of Children and Family records, digital forensic records, including texts and information that was provided by the watch that she wore, the Apple Watch, and the phone, variety of medical records, police investigative records, police interviews with many people, and grand jury proceedings, as well as surveillance footage of the Clancy family going to various places, Museum of Science visit, Cape Cod, CVs, that sort of thing.
And in total, all the time that you took to review these documents, look at the evidence, interview and test Ms. Clancy, approximately how much time have you spent on this case?
About 180 hours prior to coming to Plymouth. So most of that was spent in reviewing records. About 10 and a half hours was spent in meeting with Ms. Clancy and doing the testing. And then another hour and a half was spent in collateral interviews. And
who did you interview in collateral interviews?
I interviewed her former husband, Patrick Clancy, and his mother, Ms. Clancy's mother-in-law, Sue Clancy.
And did you also request to interview Ms. Clancy's mother and sister?
Not her mother. I did request to interview her sister, and I think she decided against that.
Now, you mentioned that when you interviewed Ms. Clancy on the first and third days, you were with Dr. Mack, correct?
Correct.
Why is it that you two were interviewing Ms. Clancy together on those days?
Well, that's something that I do sometimes, conduct a joint interview. That's done in training contexts, for example, a fair amount. And in this case, many of the questions that we were going to ask her, a large number of the questions that we were going to ask her about her background and her history were going to be similar. So we were able to conduct those, ask those questions in a way and save some time, keep her from having to go through and ask and answer them twice. Then the third day, again, many of the questions that we were going to ask had to do with her thinking, feeling, and behavior leading up to the time of January 24th. And basically, it involves kind of a step-by-step process, going very slowly, getting a lot of detail. And we expected that many of those questions, sort of step-by-step detail, were going to be things that we would be able to work on, or they were going to be things that we could ask twice, or we could ask once and see it on the video.
And in terms of your interviewing Ms. Clancy together, after that was done, did the two of you come up with a joint opinion on a diagnosis?
We did not, no. Although we were interviewing her together on 2 days, we took that information and we each independently came up with our own report, our own review of that information, our own analysis of what it meant, and so on. So, no, we wrote separate reports. We actually did not agree on the diagnosis.
Now, if we could have the PowerPoint. In terms of your evaluation of Ms. Clancy, including the records and the collateral interviews and your interviews of her, did you form some main conclusions?
I did, yes.
And if you could tell us, what were your major findings regarding Ms. Clancy's mental health history before September of 2022?
She had a fairly limited mental health history before September 2022. She did experience some anxiety related to achievement. She's a very strong student in school, and she got straight A's, basically. She experienced some anxiety while in nursing school doing case presentations because you have to stand up in front of a group, and that made her kind of anxious. And then she had some anxiety connected with her 3 pregnancies, some in the beginning about the ultrasounds and so on, and some sort of as she was returning to work. So after each child, she'd have some time off with the child, and then after several months she would return to work. And on each of those occasions, with Cora and Dawson and Callan, she had some anxiety because she didn't like to leave her children. That was an important consideration for her, whether it was dropping them off at school or returning to work or leaving them with a babysitter or going out with friends, going out on date night. She didn't like to leave them. And so those were some of the things that were connected with her mental health history before September of 2022. And this was in the context of her growing up as a highly achieving individual, getting very strong grades, competing in sports and competitive cheerleading. These are all things that the anxiety probably pushed her a little bit more in the direction of doing this very well, because she was a very hardworking and highly self-disciplined individual. She also grew up in a family that was close and comfortable, and had a number of friends that she spent time with, both as a girl and a teenager and so on. But she was very highly achieving, and I think one of the important aspects of her mental health history before September of 2022 is that she really did not experience anxiety in a way that interfered very much with her functioning. She had a little bit of she had about 6 months worth of treatment for the anxiety connected with the nursing school. But it was not something that interfered with her life very much prior to September of 2022.
And doctor, did you also learn that growing up as a child, she didn't experience any type of abuse, witness any domestic violence, have any sort of trauma or anything like that as she was growing up?
Yes, one of the psychological tests, which I'll talk about a little bit later, is called the Adverse Childhood Experiences measure, and that's something that asks an individual whether they went through what we would call adverse experiences or traumatic experiences as a child and an adolescent. And there are 10 of them, and if you have 4 or more of them, that puts you at higher risk for different kinds of adverse outcomes as an adult. She did not endorse any of those. So on the ACEs questionnaire, she had a 0, which really goes to the question that you ask of whether she had adverse or traumatic experiences as a child.
And so she did not, correct? She did not report any.
She did not report any, and there were any number of individuals who were asked similar questions about her childhood and her adolescence, and they all said basically no, she did not.
And then can you tell us about your major findings for the mental health history beginning in September 2022?
Yes, I can. So it was about 12 weeks after her son Callan was born, and she was feeling very anxious and sometimes depressed about having to leave him when he went back to work. There were 2 reasons for that. One is that she had felt anxious about leaving her children on a number of occasions and with the previous kids. But the second reason was she was breastfeeding and Callan was not taking the bottle. And so she was worried if she went back to work. She worked as a labor and delivery nurse on the night shifts. And she was worried that if she left Callan home and he woke up in the night and wouldn't take the bottle, there would be a problem. And so that was what got her particularly anxious. And what happened was she searched for a psychiatrist, found one, Dr. Jennifer Tufts, in September, and went to Dr. Tufts and got a prescription for Zoloft she wanted to reduce her anxiety somewhat. And she didn't begin taking it immediately. She was a little bit worried about the impact that it might have on the breast milk. But sometime in October, she began taking the Zoloft. And things started getting very difficult at that point.
And doctor, did you learn how things became difficult from the records in your interview of her?
I did, both of those, and from, I guess you could say the records, because a number of people had talked about that, including her husband, Patrick, and I also got some of that information from him as well during the collateral interview.
And what did you learn?
What was happening toward the end of his 12-week paternity leave is that she was getting more anxious when she started in mid-October taking the Zoloft. She immediately began to have some difficulty. The anxiety did not get better. In fact, it got worse. There were some symptoms of depression. She immediately started having some really difficult insomnia. And felt a lot of stress and so on. And so